Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who have seen most of my previous posts, you probably noticed that I'm a pretty big collector of old handguns, things that were made 25, 30 years ago. Those are the guns that showed up all the time in the movies I grew up watching as a kid, so they're my favorite guns to own. But a couple of years back, I decided that I wanted to start buying some more modern handguns. And the first that I bought is what you see here. This is a SIG P365 X-MACRO Comp. And I first found out about this gun maybe 2 years ago, and it was really the hotness with a lot of the gun tubers I watched, channels like Coleon Noir and Mr. Guns and Gear and Sean Ryan. And that's what got me interested in owning one. There's been a saying in the handgun community for years that the Glock 19 is the peak handgun, and I want to say it was Masad Ayub who said that. This gun is probably the first serious challenger to that peak handgun throne. And what made it such a sensation when it came out is what I will show you momentarily. So first things first, for the sake of safety, empty. This is the gun's magazine, and as you can see here, that is a 17. So yeah, you are seeing correctly. This very compact pistol, and you can see how big it is in my hands, holds 17 rounds. Now, when this gun came out in 2022, that was almost unheard of, because 17 rounds is typically the capacity of something like my Glock 17 here, which is a full-size service pistol. And you can see the difference. I mean, the SIG is much shorter and much thinner. And yet, it holds the exact same capacity as the larger handgun. And really, this gun is the product of a sort of a quiet war between SIG and Glock to dominate the carry pistol market. And I think that started probably around 2013, which is when Glock came out with the G43. And if you know that gun, that was one of the best-selling carry pistols of its day. SIG responded by coming out with the original P365. Both of them were 6-shot 9mm, very tiny. So then Glock upped the ante when they came out with the 43X, which was same as a 43, but with an extended grip that took a 10-round magazine. So SIG came back with the P365X. And then after that, Glock came out with the 48, so that had a longer slide. So SIG got to come out with the P365 XL, which had a longer slide. You get the idea. It was tit for tat between those two companies. So then SIG completely flipped the script when they came out with this gun. I mean, let's just say that if Glock was Drake and SIG was Kendrick Lamar, this gun was their "they not like us" moment. And really, even 3 years after this gun came out, Glock has yet to introduce anything comparable. There are some other companies with similar guns, like Springfield, which has the Hellcat Pro. But as of right now, SIG is dominating the carry market with this gun, and Glock has yet to come up with anything that's comparable. I've had this gun for a while at this point, so at this point, having shot it, how do I feel about it? So first things first, magazine capacity is very, very nice. Before I had this gun, the only other carry pistol I had was this, my Glock 26. And this gun takes a 10-round magazine as standard. This magazine actually has a Pierce grip extension, which gives it 2 more rounds. And this gun is actually, like the Glock 17, it's much wider than the P365 X-MACRO, but the grip is a lot shorter. I think that, most people will find the idea of a carry gun that has such a long grip like this being perhaps not ideal, but for me, it works out just fine. I would rather have a grip that I can really get my hand around. And then on top of that, the idea that with 2 magazines, I would have the same number of rounds that I'd have with 3 magazines for my Glock 26 is very, very impressive. Now, I still have to point out, not everybody really thinks this way. There are still people who think that the Glock 43 and, pistols like it were the peak of the carry gun market and that, smaller is better. I certainly think one has to consider their body type and what's right for them. So definitely ask yourself whether something this size is right for you based on that. That being said, that brings me to my next point. One of the things that's interesting about the P365 series as a whole, and really all of SIG's modern pistols, is the fact that the fire control unit is removable. So the fire control unit, which you can't see, but it's got the trigger, the slide release, and also the takedown lever. All of those things are on a metal chassis within the frame that if you punch this pin out in the back, the entire thing comes out. So what does that mean? Well, even if you were to decide this gun isn't right for you, you could buy something like, a regular P365 frame and slide, or you could buy the X, whichever one you want. I mean, the idea is you can still rebuild this gun as a smaller model, which you can't do with a Glock. Like, if you buy the wrong Glock size, you got to get a whole new pistol. And I do think that adds a lot of value to this gun. It adds a lot of upgrade potential that no pistol made by Glock gives you, because Glock has yet to embrace the removable fire control unit concept. And on that note, I will also point out there's still a lot of things about the factory X-MACRO that are uncommon for pistols of this type, specifically the flat face trigger, which you see here. The flat face trigger, besides giving you a shorter pull, also makes it a lot easier to do quick follow-up shots. And it's a feature that you typically see on custom pistols, not a factory gun. So, if you're not going to replace the trigger, it's kind of like, what else would you need to upgrade, right? Well, I guess the slide release, maybe for some people. I mean, I definitely think it's a little bit small, if that means something to you. But then again, there's a lot of people that have the mindset that when you reload a carry pistol, or really almost any handgun, you're supposed to slingshot it, just pull the slide back to rechamber around. I'm not necessarily one of those people. I would have loved to have a longer slide release, but this still is functional and it works fine for me. I will say, though, that I'm not the biggest fan of the compensator slots that you see right here, which is a standard feature of the X-MACRO Comp model. Look kind of cool. The problem is, I don't really think, based on what I've seen so far, that they really compensate the barrel. And if you look at it, the barrel ends right before the spot where the compensator slots begin. There's no compensator slots on the slide that correspond to slots on the barrel. And I don't really think any gun that is designed this way is really going to have reduced recoil, which is what a compensator does, because once the gas has gotten out of the barrel, it's just a lot harder to vent it. So if I had to do it again, I would have probably just bought the regular X-MACRO model, which doesn't have these slots and also has the front sight a lot further forward. And that's another point to make. It's like you want the front sight to be as far forward as possible on a gun this short, because that's going to give you a better iron sight picture. Another option, you can always just buy the new X-MACRO Radian kit, which is pretty new at the time that I record this video. That's basically just a P365 slot. A regular P365 slide, which then has a separate compensator on the front along with a longer barrel. And that's probably going to work a lot better. So consider that as an option. Last thing I'm going to point out, the back straps on this gun are removable, which again is something that I know most handgun owners have come to expect. But I've never owned a pistol with removable back straps. And this is the medium size, which works fine for me, but there is a larger one for those with bigger hands and also a smaller one for those with smaller hands. Another thing I'm going to talk about is the red dot, which you see up here. So this is the Romeo Zero Elite, which was sort of introduced at almost the same time as the gun. And at one point, SIG offered this red dot as a factory configuration item. I bought this one separately a lot more recently. And the last couple of years, SIG has really not been selling this as a standard feature with any of their pistols. They're instead trying to promote the Romeo X Compact, which is what now comes as a factory option. And I do think part of that is because the Romeo Zero Elite has not gotten great reviews. I've seen a lot of complaints about its battery life, especially if you use the reticle option. Another thing that sucks about it is that it is not an easy optic to activate. The on button is this little button you see right behind the window. And it's very hard to actuate. Like every time I turn this gun on, I have to use like an Allen wrench or a screwdriver to do that. Switching reticle bright or red dot brightness is more challenging. Zeroing involves basically sticking an Allen wrench into these holes here to adjust left and right. It would be a lot easier if there were just switches on the side, which is what the Romeo X has. So why did I buy it then if I don't really like it so much? Well, I mean, our Romeo X is a lot more expensive, and since I've never really owned a red dot for a pistol before and I have no experience shooting them, I figured I was going to start cheap, and that's really the main appeal of this optic is simply its price. And at some point I will almost surely upgrade, whether it's a Romeo X, specifically one of the new closed emitter models, which I've been hearing good things about. But this works for now. It's also nice that it's got a very compact form factor. And so I would say for somebody who's new to red dots like myself, it probably makes sense. But for those of you who have a little more experience, you might want to consider a different model. Another feature I wanted to speak about briefly is this frame. This is a Wilson combat frame. I am eventually planning to remove the fire control unit and put it into this frame, which I like the texture of the grip a lot better. I also like that it comes with an enhanced beveled magazine well, which should make reloads easier. But so far I've been putting off that upgrade until I record this video and show you guys the factory configuration. So yeah, overall, I can't say enough good things about this pistol. In the few short years that it's been out, it has definitely changed the carry pistol market significantly. It's been a fun gun to shoot, even though I have very limited range time with it as of this moment. And I think that for most people, it is probably a good option, again, with the caveats that I've expressed. So if you're looking at it, I can't recommend it enough.